Hello, everybody. Andy Jacob here with the DotCom Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. I'm so happy you joined us today because we have a very important show today. At DotCom Magazine, we always talk about wealth and debt management and what it's all about and how entrepreneurs oftentimes have to surround themselves, most of the time, every time, need to surround themselves with a top-notch attorney and a top-notch accountant, especially in the startup mode. As you're getting going, you need to learn how to protect your assets, your business, really with the help of a legal authority, somebody that's someone in the space that really understands what you're doing, what you're about to go into as an entrepreneur, and of course, your business model, and using various things that the legal system allows us to use to protect yourself and protect your company, protect your family, and protect your assets. So, of course, we invited a real expert on the show today. Her name is Selwyn Whitehead, and she, of course, is the owner of the law offices of Selwyn D. Whitehead, and she is an expert in everything that we're talking about today. She really focuses on helping her clients manage their wealth, really through effective estate and tax planning, and also looking at the ways to protect the business through the various ways that we can protect businesses and can protect personal assets through the different sort of corporations or limited liability corporations that you set up at the beginning. And she's an expert in helping so many companies out there not only put their businesses together right at the beginning, but what happens in the unlikely event that things don't go well in a business? Well, she has an expertise in that as well, and we're going to talk about that. But Selwyn, welcome to the .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series today.
Well, I am just pleased as punch to be here. And thanks so much for inviting me, Andy. I really appreciate it.
I love it. I love it. Pleased as punch. I love that. I haven't heard that in a long time. That's fantastic. What a great way to get started. Selwyn, let's pull the lens back to 30,000 feet as we're known for at the .com Magazine show. Just to get started, tell us about your practice, and then we're going to get into it, some very specific questions for you.
Well, sure. My practice is the intersection of the law as it impacts my clients' finances. People who have wealth that they want to preserve and transfer to the next generation. But also, at least once in our lives, we're going to run up against a financial difficulty. And I like to have people think about bankruptcy as an opportunity to resolve that obstacle under a court-supervised process that's part of the United States Constitution. And it was put there for the very reason to give individuals and families a fresh start when they run into financial difficulties, or those same individuals and families and small businesses to let them reorganize their debt such that they can take off on another trajectory. And I love bankruptcy.
I can tell. Let's talk about it a little bit before we talk about generational wealth and building that and how you help your clients do that. Let's talk to the entrepreneurs watching the show about the different types of bankruptcy that there is and why and how they are used in specific cases.
Well, before we get into bankruptcy, there's something that entrepreneurs need to really consider. That's structuring their business so that they can be a bit divorced, if not separated, from their debt. Such as, if you want to be a sole proprietor, that's an easy way to get your business going. But you and your business are one and the same entity. So if the business fails, and we got to know between 75 and 95% of businesses that start today will not be around 10 years from now. In fact, half of them are going to go away in 5 years. So that means that the resources that you use to start your business are at stake if you're a sole proprietorship. That's just like, you getting a XYZ credit card, and you're going to have to deal with that, and you're going to be sued. So sole proprietor is the quickest and cheapest way to start a business, but you might want to look at other kinds of entities that, like I said, at least have a bit of separation between your debt and yourself. because that'll come into play if you must file for bankruptcy. Okay? It might just be that if your business is separate from you, it can file for bankruptcy and have someone like me and a bankruptcy judge and a trustee figure out what makes the most sense according to a priority. But it'll be separate from you, and you might be able to just carry on with your life. And so the first thing is to figure out how to structure your business that will protect you and your kids. You might be the difference between them, a trustee selling your house out from up under you and giving you an exemption, and it might just be that you can keep your house because the house is not involved in the reorganization or the liquidating bankruptcy.
Yeah, Selwyn, that's great advice. Of course, this is the type of advice that you give when you host your radio talk show, that you talk about bankruptcy and taxation and trust and estates and real estate law. When someone calls you and they say, hey, Selwyn, we've heard you on the radio, we know about your practice, we want to start a company. What's that conversation sound like from your perspective about how you get them structured correctly at the very beginning to protect themselves from some of these things that you just mentioned?
Well, first I want to know if they have a viable product or service. Have they done their background homework? And if I find out that this is just maybe a pipe dream, and there's nothing wrong with pipe dreams, we all start out that way. But in order to have a business, we have to have a product or service. We've identified the marketplace. We've talked to folks to get our pricing together. And if not, then I kind of want to steer them towards some of the nonprofits that I work with. If they're a low to moderate income individual, or maybe someone from a historically underserved communities, there are nonprofits out there that can help them come up with their business plan. In fact, I have a relationship with one that's in San Francisco, and then we help them identify an accountant to help them, structure their finances. So I want to make sure that they have a sound footing. Then, we'll talk about the proper structure. Okay, you believe that you should be a sole proprietorship because, XYZ, you don't have, the ability to hire all these people that you need to structure your business with. But then I'm going to say, again, your business is 30% of businesses fail within the first year. So you need to figure out, and where's the money coming from to start this? Is it coming from you? From your savings? Is it coming from your family members? Or do you know about seed funding that might be out there in the community, maybe in your own community? If it's your money and you're going to put it at risk, then maybe a sole proprietorship will work, because once your money runs out, you won't owe anybody anything. If that makes sense. But if you're going to be borrowing money, you need to think about structuring your business through an entity, so you'll have at least some separation between you and the debt.
Yeah, that's so powerful, Selwyn, because people call you and you have all these other resources that your clients can go to, and you make these recommendations and these connections to other resources that can help them maybe fully understand their business, maybe put a good business plan together, maybe improve on their business. Let's talk about some of those sort of unique places that you can send people to that give an opportunity, maybe even for free or for a very low price, to your clients to help them along the way to build their dream of entrepreneurship.
Well, sure. For example, I just entered into a consulting relationship with the San Francisco Housing Development Corporation, who is the fiscal agent for a merchants association in the Fillmore district in San Francisco. And for those of you who don't know, the Fillmore district is a predominantly African American community, and it's always been the goal of the city of San Francisco to have that be a robust area. So the San Francisco Housing Development Corporation, they're bringing together CPAs, people like me, people that can help with your marketing, people that can help you design your website, people that can tell you whether or not, they're already out there in the marketplace in the San Francisco Bay Area, 1 billion of those kind of businesses. And so maybe you want to look at something else, or maybe you want to tweak it a little bit to make it have appeal to a broader audience. But then anymore, our marketplace is no longer just our area if we're doing a service as opposed to delivering a product. So maybe the fact that it's saturated in the Bay Area doesn't mean that it's not something that people on the East Coast or people in South America might be interested in. So the goal is to open up the mind of the individual or individuals or family that's going to start this business to look at it not only from what the business is going to bring to them financially, but what they're going to bring to the marketplace, and so that they can have the finances that they need to grow as a business. So hooking up with governmental agencies, Small Business Administration, every city here in California has some kind of home ownership or economic development entity in it. So I want to tie them into that, and also make sure that they got their permits and their licenses lined up, because you have to pay to play, as it were, with government. So I just try to be a resource to the folks that call me, and sometimes I can be kind of like strict and sometimes quite ferocious. I think someone said to me. Well, it's kind of like I feel like sometimes I'm the lioness in a group of lions. It's the lionesses and it's the cubs, and you just want to make sure that your business gets a good foundation, just like you want to do for your own child or your children.
Yeah, I love that so much. So your clients get that ferociousness with Selwyn, and of course, you're like the mama, lion that's taking care of the cubs and making sure that they're not going astray. Let's talk a little bit about why companies go sideways. You mentioned that not a lot of companies don't make it after the first year or the second year or the third year. Very few companies make it past 5 years. What are some of the things that you see, Selwyn, as to why a company doesn't make it, through the fifth year or even through the first year in their startup mode?
It's because entrepreneurs know everything. Okay, so I'm myself included. Okay, we know our product or service down. We know it. We dream about it. We're telling everybody about it. It's turning off potential lovers because that's all we want to talk about. But we don't understand business. We don't understand the law, and we don't understand finances and marketing. So that's what causes businesses to fail, if the failure is on their part. Or it could be some change in the marketplace or the channel that's selected. I'll give an example of myself. I'm an engineer by training. I started working for the company that got absorbed by AT&T here in California, Pacific Telephone and Telegraph. Great company. I was like one of the first female engineers that was hired to help them with their own network. And then because of my military background, I was married to a soldier, a military brat. I was selected to be put into the branch of the Pacific Telephone and Telegraph that sold products to the Navy. Because my former spouse was in the Army, they didn't want any kind of hanky-panky or any kind of, even the appearance of collusion. They put me over the Navy, where I would design systems. I got to design systems for aircraft carriers and for submarines. It was like so cool. I loved it. All the men in my family were jealous, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, so when the company got folded into AT&T, I didn't like that arrangement, so I just took off on my own. And I was a consultant to the local telephone company. And I got this great contract, and then the very next week, everybody went out on strike. And they went out on strike, and they stayed out on strike for a long time, and my business folded. So that's an example. I did the right thing. I knew what I was doing. I had good people helping me. I had a lawyer helping me with my contract. I had an accountant helping me, get my books and stuff together. But the marketplace changed because the people who I was going to sell the products to and through, they went out on strike. So that's just an example of some things are out of your control and other things are within your control. You just have to be ready to pivot, to change, to bring on new knowledge base, find new clients. And so that's an example of why businesses fail.
I agree. And so, what's the thing about your practice that in your mind you say to yourself, this is great? Like, once you have a client, do they call you often, Selwyn, and with questions about entrepreneurship and questions about marketing and business, or do they only call you about questions about the law? Or do you sort of open up your umbrella to use this great background and experience that you have to help your clients in other ways as well?
Well, a lot for the last, I'd say 10-ish years or so, I was bombarded with people who needed to have restructuring of their business. So they came to me with a problem, and that was, do we decide if we're going to shut the business down with a scheme where my client will have a nest egg, because that's part of our United States Constitution. It's at Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4, that Congress is basically the one that's in charge of the bankruptcy code, and the Supreme Court is in charge of the rules and regulations, and then state and federal law comes into play. So do we want to shut the business down in a way that makes sense for my client, or do we want to reorganize it? And I really enjoy helping a business think through the reorganization process, which is the reciprocal of what you do when you start a business. And so what do I mean by that? The code makes you come up with a plan that includes financials. And so that means you have to bring on an accountant or at least an enrolled agent that'll help you with your finances. I'm there as the lawyer, and then we might bring on marketing people. So it's all about reclaiming the entrepreneurial spirit, but now we have the background to make sure the business goes. Things that I have found that my clients didn't have initially. You would not believe the number of businesses that don't recognize the need for having a team. You need a lawyer, or at least you need to have one on some kind of retainer where you maybe you don't. Maybe they give you a discounted rate because you're going to, call on them periodically. You need to have a CPA. You really do, or at least a bookkeeper to start. And you need someone to help you market. And so you either do it you pay me up front, or you pay me on the back end.
Right. And it's much better to pay you up front because, you can keep yourself out of problems. If you're an entrepreneur watching the show, especially a younger entrepreneur, listen to what Selwyn says. I mean, surround yourself with top people, get a good attorney, get a good accountant, or at least a bookkeeper, like she says, because talking to those people and hiring those people early, while, you might say to yourself, well, I'm not sure if I want to spend that money right now, that's going to keep you out of a lot of problems down the road. Isn't that sort of the way that it works out, Selwyn?
It sure is. And you also need someone, mostly your CPA, if you get one, will help you with your taxes, because taxes are very exciting to me. So, sue me. but there's all these ways that you can push the collection of taxes forward. That's not embezzlement, that's not, evading taxes, but you might want to push the payment of taxes forward. For example, you do that as part of an estate plan to deal with your wealth. And, we're hearing today that, in government that, people with a lot of money, sometimes they have these dynasty trusts where they never pay taxes. I'm not going to make a value judgment about that, but I want to help my clients decide if we can push the obligation for paying the taxes forward without incurring any penalties or having the IRS come up, want to kill us. And so I like doing that. And you need to know that, because some of the decisions you make today about purchasing maybe some of the products that you need to create your invention, maybe there's multiple ways to acquire those component parts that will allow you to push the taxation of the entire product forward. And so my philosophy is this. So, like you said, surround yourself with people that will stimulate your brain and help you think through the up and the downside. Because as in football or tennis, or unfortunately, as we're seeing today, warfare, you have to have an offensive strategy that sometimes offends people, but offensive going forward. But you also need to have a defensive strategy for when things don't go quite right, or what are you going to do? And if you have the proper team around you, they'll stimulate your brain, and you'll think through not everything, because life is full of surprises, but most of the things that you're going to encounter with your business.
Yeah, that's great advice. And of course, when a client of yours comes to your firm, they had all of this background and experience and all of these connections that you've been able to make, in particular throughout the San Francisco area, which is really remarkable. When we think about it, we think about your practice, Selwyn. Let's talk about entrepreneurship. Let's talk about, you're an entrepreneur, you're helping entrepreneurs, and it's always a great way to go to sort of pay it forward and move forward with the type of pay it forward mentality that you've become known for in your practice. When we think about entrepreneurship, what are some of the things that you can share with the younger entrepreneurs about what it takes to get through a pothole in the road? What does it take to get through a wall? What does it take when they freeze in the frame? What can you say to entrepreneurs based on your experience that can help the entrepreneurs who are maybe stumbling or bumbling a little bit right now, but they want to get through it in a powerful way?
Well, I hate to use what's going on in the world today as an example, but I'm compelled to, because I was thinking about it last night. The Ukrainians are so resilient and persistent, and they got chutzpah. I would call it something else, but I won't. And it's like, whatever, you're not going to take over our country. No way, Jose. Mr. Man or Mr. Lady. And they're also compelling the rest of us to support them in the ways that they need. We need to listen to what they're asking for. And so let's bring that back down to a business. You as an entrepreneur are going to run up against roadblocks, especially if you're a woman or a person of color, or you're an individual that's coming into maybe a closed marketplace and you're trying to bust it open, because you have a right to be in that marketplace, and you have a right to have the money you need to raise your kids. And so, there's going to be all kinds of asks. I speak to myself as a lawyer. I don't look like, most of the lawyers of any kind, but especially bankruptcy attorneys or wealth management attorneys. But I don't care. This is something that I know how to do. I'm good at it, and I love it. So when I run into obstacles, I just say, well, that's today's obstacle, and I'll just, find a new one tomorrow. That one's by the board. And then I go to my own resources. I have a couple of really great lawyer friends and judges and former judges, and if I run into problems, I pick up the phone and they respond, and they say, they help me solve my own problem. But they're there with their experience, based on what they believe and what they think. And then, I come up and I say, well, thank you very much, because you helped me think through the ramifications of it. That's what entrepreneurs need, especially young ones. Okay, so I love young people, but you're young for a reason. I'm in my 60s, you're in your 20s. That gap means that a lot of things have happened to me that you won't even think about. And so that's why you need to listen to your elders and your betters, as my grands used to say. But sometimes your elders and your better might just be 10 years older than you, but they have 10 more years of experience. And if you surround yourself with them, they can help you solve your own problems. So tenacity, resilience, stick-to-itiveness, and access to resources is what especially young entrepreneurs need, I think.
Yeah, I love it. So, of course, there's this old saying that says youth is wasted on the young. Something during this conversation that sort of resonates for me, and I knew that it would because we checked you out. Of course, we did our due diligence on you, is you have this great attitude. You have this great approach. You have this spark, like you mentioned. You sort of look at yourself like, in the lion's den, like, you're the mama lion looking out for the cubs and making sure that the pride is working well. Where did this come from? Was this something that you grew up with? Was this something that was taught you at an early age about having this sort of, can-do attitude? Or was that something for you, Selwyn, that sort of machinated as you got older along your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, some of the women in my family, they kind of get angry with me because I lay a lot of my success at the feet of my dad. My dad was a professional soldier. I was his little girl. I have an older brother and I have younger brothers, but I was his only little girl. And he was such a mama's boy that, he wanted to do so much for his mother. And, my grandmother was raised by her grandfather, who was at one time a slave. And so there was no wealth in our family, but my grandmother sacrificed such that, her children got an opportunity to move. They moved from this plantation on into this little town, and so they were able to go to school, a segregated school, but they were able to go to school and had an opportunity to go to college. And my dad and his younger brother, they wanted to be in the service. They watched all those Audie Murphy movies, and so they thought that being a service person was the thing to do, and it was one of the choices that was open to Black educated persons at the time. And so my dad, I think reflecting on what he wanted to do for his mother, or wished that someone had done for her, he wanted to do it for me. So he raised me to be self-resilient. He raised me to be able to take care of myself, to think of myself as equal to my brothers, and also that it was going to be harder for me. But so what? If you have someone that loves you when you're young and they teach you to love yourself, then anything is possible. We all have a duty in this world to make a contribution, and sometimes we don't know what it's going to be. My dad always thought that I should be a lawyer, but I wasn't very articulate because I was introverted, but he would pull things out, and he said, well, I want you to develop into being a leader, being a lawyer, doing what you need to take care of yourself and your family. And if you do that, I will be so proud of you. So my dad got to see me design a system for an aircraft carrier, and I had an opportunity to go up in a jet, and he just loved that. And then before he passed, I entered law school after my marriage ended and my son was able to take care of himself. He was just so pleased that I entered law school. So I dedicate my law degree to my dad for his loving me enough to make me take care of myself.
Wow, Selwyn, I tell you, from, working on aircraft carriers to, now going to law school and now practicing and helping so many people with their wealth and debt management, of course, bankruptcy, which you're an expert in, with their wills and trusts and estates and all their real estate and taxation law that you're involved with. It's remarkable. And the way in which you help these entrepreneurs as well by connecting them to the right organizations and connecting them to the right people that can help them along their entrepreneurial journey. I don't know how you fit it all into a common 24-hour day, Selwyn, but listen, this has been great having you on the show. I'm going to bring you back because I want to unpack this childhood a little bit more, because it's such a fascinating journey to sort of learn from your father a can-do attitude. And it's that same type of can-do attitude that you try and teach your clients as well. However, when it gets a little tough in business, you're also there to help them structure and restructure in a way that's meaningful so that they can continue to empower themselves in the entrepreneurial journey with the businesses that they're running. So, Selwyn, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series today. This has been fantastic. You're a ball of energy, and we need more people like you in the world today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That's so kind of you to say.